Hello everybody and welcome back to another development log. In the last two development logs, I sent out a little bit of a SOS on needing another name, and I think we're gonna go with chain guns and chainmail, or chainmail and chain guns. It's not set in stone, but I think that's my favorite title so far. Shout out to John in the Indie Allies Discord for the name suggestion. So I'm gonna be doing something a little bit different. The first half is going to be completely like normal, the cut up edits where I show you things that I've been doing. And I decided in the second half what I want to do is just go ahead and finish one of the systems in the development log so you guys can experience the development process with me. So let's get started with the first half. The first thing you're going to note is I have populated the maps. There is a ton more decals. We got pickups like health all over the place. We've got more enemies as I try to balance a good amount of enemies versus making it too hard. I have a new global illumination method that I highly recommend. Instead of a directional light, I've switched to using a skylight, and then I'm using an SLS specified cube map. And I chose the gray dark texture. You can choose one of the actual like pre-packaged images. And if they work well for your project, great. I went with gray because I want to be able to control the color a little bit as well as the exact amount. And in order to make it a nice global illumination that basically hits everything, is I just made it so it doesn't cast shadows. It still affects the world, but it does not cast shadows. And now we have a much better global illumination. Something else I've added that I don't believe I put in the previous development logs, I'll show you really quick, is we have a new enemy type. If this isn't new, my bad. But as you'll see here, we have a new type of enemy, the skeleton, who has to combine up off of the ground in order to start coming to get you. And as you can see, as of right now, he's not swinging, and he should be. So we actually just found a small little bug that I am going to have to figure out. And I didn't mean to get stuck. I wanted to come over here so you guys can maybe see the animation. Yeah, there you go. And then they start walking towards you. Are you gonna swing at me? Interesting, so these guys have bugged out. I will have to figure out what that's about. However, I had to go through a giant process of completely changing how my guns were created. Previously, I were using structs, and I would just say, hey, this is the static mesh, this is its damage, bullets per shot, etc., etc., etc. And then I would take the struct and I'd put it into the first person character where it would actually combine all the elements together to make the gun. But I tried to do a test build and I was getting a lot of errors because it was saying all my structures were unknown. I am taking advice from Captain Marsh from the Indie Allies Discord, and I'm no longer using structs. I guess when you use structs in blueprints specifically, they have a lot of errors. Now, I don't know if that's exactly the case here. I'm not a specialist when it comes to that, but I figured I could go ahead and rework the gun system anyway. So let's head over to the prototyping level and I'll show you what it's doing. This is my prototyping level. For anyone that doesn't know why you would do this, basically it's so your computer isn't really running anything. It's a very empty level where you can hard control what's there. But let me go ahead and show you what my current gun system looks like now. Oh, okay, current camera location no longer gonna work here. Okay, the first thing I want to show you is how the gun is attached to our player. Previously, like I said, it was being built in the first person character, but now, because it's its own element, it is now a child actor, and then it's parented into the skeletal mesh, and then because it's parented into the skeletal mesh, it is attached to a grip socket in an invisible mesh that is present, and that's where we're getting that idle animation or this moving animation. And you'll see that it kind of does this weird lag, or not really a lag, but it's like got a little bit of a sway to it. It feels like it's got some weight to it. It actually feels present in the world. It's not super static. And I'm doing that by, if you look on the left hand side here, you'll see that we have a spring arm that is attached to the skeletal mesh. The spring arm is actually also parented to the grip point, which means the gun is no longer parented to the grip point because the gun is now attached to the spring arm. And then on the spring arm, what I did was I enabled camera lag and enabled camera rotation lag, because, you know, by default it is meant for putting the camera on, but in this case it's working for this other purpose. We're using a camera lag of 30 and a rotation lag of 30. Anything less and it starts to fall behind a bit too much. For some stuff, lowering that would be very nice, but because this is a gun, right, you want it to be pointed forward, and if you're actually holding a gun, you're going to be holding it pretty stiff, right? It's a very important object. So we got that increased lag speed, so that way it keeps up a little bit better. And just to kind of show you what I meant, by the way, here's the skeletal mesh. So if I go over here and I go ahead and just hit visible, and we make it visible, here is the arms that come with the first person template, and then we have everything on that grip point. So we just have some basic animations we can use to give the gun a little bit more of a better feel. However, let's talk about the actual feel of the gun. So let me go ahead and hit play, and you'll note that I made sure a couple things happened. One, obviously, if we left click, we want it to fire. If we hold left click, we want it to continuously fire. You'll see I got some debug stuff up there letting me know how many bullets are in the thing. But there were things that I wanted to make sure were implemented so it actually felt well to use. Like, for example, if I fire, let go, then fire, like before the gun is ready, right? So fire, let go, fire. I wanted to make sure that it would continue going. Or, for example, if I fire, let go, and then fire one more time, but I'm a little bit early, it still doesn't punish you and it fires an additional time. So I'll click pretty fast here. Click, click. It still goes off. I wanted to make sure it felt really well to use. And you'll see, obviously I don't have my UI up, so I don't have like an aimer or anything, but I've been putting a lot of work into just making sure this feels really good. You'll also note that on the side of the gun, you see that little thing there, it's flicking back and forth. So this was actually a single static mesh, and what I did is I went into Blender, I went ahead and removed those from the side, exported those by themselves, and I made them a separate static mesh. And in order to animate this, because obviously with this being two static meshes, we're not a skeletal mesh, so we can't just do animations. So what I've done is, as you can see, this is a separate mesh. However, it is childed to the gun. The gun is the parent here. And what happens is whenever the gun fires in the sequence, it will eventually call the fire animation. And you'll see that we have a sequence of two things happening. The top is like the recoil. It's the gun going back. You'll see that basically what I'm doing is I'm taking the gun base, I'm moving the component to a location that adds a little bit of rotation and a little bit of backs. That way it kind of does this, right? And so the gun is modular. I'm using the gun cooldown as a way to decide how fast and how powerful this is. Like, for example, we have the gun cooldown duration. We want that initial backing, you know, that fire to be the hardest part. So we're taking that gun cooldown, we're dividing it by 4. Then we subtract the gun cooldown from the speed at which we went, meaning now we have how much time is left before we can fire again. And we plug that back into the component moving back to its original position. So let's see that in action here. So the first one is 1/4 of the duration of the cooldown. See how it went cut really fast, and then it kind of slid back instead of going the same speed. And this is for two reasons. One, it just looks natural. And two, it lets the player know when they can fire again, right? When that gets back in position, you know you can fire again. So it's just a little bit of a visual indicator. Then the second thing that's happening in the sequence is the little slider on the side. We got the blaster B sides here, and all I'm doing is I'm very simply just saying go one direction, go back. And we're doing that over 0.2 seconds. I'm not doing a specific amount based on the cooldown duration. I'm just saying do your slide, which would have to be adjusted, of course, if this was any faster. Now let's take a look at how I'm actually doing that setup to make it feel good. Let's start with the input. If we head over to the event graph, you'll see that literally all we're doing is we're saying whenever this is triggered, so the left mouse button, and whether the action value is true or false. If it's true, we send a interface that just has a fire request to whatever the current child actor is. If it's false, then we do the stop fire request. So let's follow the logic. If we do a fire request, then what we're going to do is immediately check, was this a queued shot? And you'll see why as we continue. If this was not a queued shot, as in all they did was left click, they've begun firing, then we can set firing to true, which changes our logic a little bit. But is the gun on cooldown? If the gun's on cooldown and they are indeed firing, then we need to queue up a shot, because basically that means they're spamming the left click button. They're not actually holding it. So we want to make sure we're still firing at the fastest rate possible. So we queue up a shot. However, if they clicked, they're firing, and the gun is not on cooldown, then what we're going to do is again check, was this a queued shot? It'll make sense eventually, I promise. If it wasn't a queued shot, we're going to go over here. We're going to say, is the timer that calls the fire function currently active? Because if it is, there's no reason to turn it on again. So we're going to say, no, it is not currently active. And we are going to run the fire function on a loop depending on the gun cooldown duration. Then what we want to do is the initial start delay. So timers do not immediately fire. They go through their full time and then fire for the first time. So what we do is we just take the inverse of the gun cooldown duration, because that's going to be how long it takes to fire the first one. And then the initial start delay is going to be the inverse of that cooldown. So that way it fires immediately. And this is indeed looping. So this is now not going to stop until we tell it to. Then I simply just say, is this timer currently saved? And if it is, we don't need to save it. Otherwise, we just go ahead and save it so it can be used in other places if we need to call it. Which, by the way, I just realized I don't need this, but I'm going to keep it for now. Okay, so we've established that they are indeed going to be firing and it's looping. So let's go take a look at the function that is happening whenever we fire. So the first thing we do is we run a use ammo request to the player. I found that just putting the ammo on the player is going to be the easiest for me. So it just simply is an interface that says, hey, what gun are you trying to use? Is that, like, do we have ammo for it? If we don't, then we're gonna play an out of ammo sound effect. We are going to send a stop fire request, and you'll see why in a minute. And eventually this will probably just switch to the next weapon, but I don't have that implemented yet. However, let's say it succeeds. We do have enough ammo. Well, we're gonna play the fire sound effect. We are going to play the Niagara system, which is the particle effect. We're gonna run the cooldown manager. So let's take a look at the cooldown manager for just a second. The cooldown manager basically just makes sure that it wasn't ran again while it was already on cooldown. So if it's not already on cooldown, then what we're gonna do is we're going to say, well, now it is. Like, clearly we're in the firing process, the firing function, it's been called, we're not on cooldown, so now we are. And then we just have a timer that will eventually come back here and it'll reset the cooldown. It'll say, okay, take the gun off cooldown. And then it checks if a shot is queued. We'll get to that in a minute. And if a shot is queued, it'll run a fire request. So sound, particles, make sure we got the cooldown running, run the fire animation. This is what I showed you earlier with the move components. Then we run a function that I've called hit scan. It's nothing more than a line trace from your face to where you're aiming over a certain distance, whatever you declare as the weapon range. This is pretty standard stuff. We just check if we hit something. If we did, we say, okay, is it a BPI enemy, which basically just means it can take damage. If it is, then we'll go ahead and run the interface to that hit actor that it has indeed been damaged, and we will just run the damage per bullet number through that. And then at the end, it just checks to see if you're firing, and if you are, it doesn't do anything because now the timer, again, remember that timer's on a loop, it's just gonna keep firing. However, if you aren't firing for whatever reason it's gotten to here, what it's gonna do is it's gonna say, okay, well, make sure we stop the fire then. This is like a fail safe, and it also helps with the queued shot. And then the stop fire request is very simple. We set firing to false, and then we clear the function name. Basically, whatever timer is running fire on repeat, clear it, and then just return that you have successfully stopped the firing. Now let's look at that queued shot so we can understand what's exactly happening, as well as why it's not only beneficial but hard to implement. So if you remember, the only place that queued shot really got ran whenever we were looking at the beginning of the fire request. So let's go to that. Let's see exactly what's going on here. So right now we'll pretend a shot isn't queued, so false, we're firing. But we're firing whenever we're on cooldown, because you can see guns on cooldown. They've tried to shoot. So we're gonna queue up a shot. So let's take a look. Queuing up a shot literally just sets this Boolean to true. I've set it as a custom event instead of just setting it, so that way, if I need to add additional logic, I can. And the only time that this actually gets checked beyond in the fire request is right here. So we've reset the cooldown. That means the gun can now fire again. That's the important part. That's why it's here. The gun can now fire again, and it's gonna get to here and it's gonna say, is a shot queued? Okay, if a shot is indeed queued, we're gonna run the fire request, but specifically as a queued shot. Let's look at why that's important. Because if it's a queued shot, we still need to run the fire request, but we don't want to set the firing variable to true because you have just used a queued shot. We don't know if they're holding left mouse button. All we know is we now have a fire request. So we're not setting that to true, because if they were holding it, then this wouldn't have ran with the queued shot as true. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna bypass firing. We're gonna just go down here to false, because if a queued shot makes it through, gun cooldown will always be false. So we're gonna run to here, and now we're checking again, is it a queued shot? Why? Well, we already know what happens with false. If we run to false, it's going to run a looping function that is going to fire the gun. So what happens if we run true? If we run true, what we're gonna do is same thing, same gun cooldown duration. We're also gonna do an initial delay of the invert. However, we're not looping. This was a queued shot. It was not one that is saying, hey, they're still firing. This also lets us now take that shot queue and put it to false. And now we're checking if we're firing, because let's say we're doing the logic for the queued shot, or we've queued up a shot. So now no matter what, that's what's next is a queued shot. If we are now holding left click, it creates an issue where it bypassed firing. And so now if you shoot and then you click too early, so it's a queued shot, but you're holding the button down, this doesn't loop. So what's gonna happen is it's just gonna stop shooting. It's gonna be like, no, you need to click again. But that doesn't feel good. So I said, screw that. We're gonna check, are you firing? So during this process, have you now held the button down? Because if you have, we know for a fact you will have ran through the false and firing is now true. And so now we can just go back down to the bottom row here and just run the looping function. I hope this is making sense. And of course, if you lift your finger, then the action value will be negative. We'll get that stop fire request. Firing will be set to false, which if you remember during the fire, that does check at the end. If we're false, it makes sure we're stopping. It'll clear the timer and we'll have a return node. So that is why we've set it up the way we've set it up, because I want it to feel good. The gun feeling good is so freaking important, which by the way is why I've changed the sound as well. I don't know if you remember the previous sound, but this one sounds so much better. Oh, doesn't that sound good? Oh, I love it. I actually don't think it's a pistol. I believe it's a rifle, but who cares? Which, shout out, by the way. Also, I'm an old man. Don't judge the size of my icons. But shout out to Snake. These are his sounds. He's got a bunch of packs with different guns. He says that it's CC0, but he appreciates a shout out. So here it is. They're on Itch.io, Snake. So that is it for the traditional devlog section. Now, if you're still interested, we are going to move on to actually developing something. I've started working on a single shotgun, which means we're going to have to implement a spread fire function, as well as a way to manage pellets, because as of right now, if I wanted to increase the amount of bullets going through, it would just decrease the amount of ammo we have. So we're going to have to implement pellets, so that way we can send out like 10 pellets on one bullet. And if that's something you want to stick around for, great. It's going to be pretty uncut. So Let's go. All right, welcome to the uncut section. I need to head over to our actors. We're gonna go into guns, and here is the start of the single shotty. So basically what I did was I duplicated the blaster that we had. So as of right now, the single shotty would act exactly like the blaster, like the code is unchanged. Other than that, what I've done is I went ahead and, oh, sorry about that. I chose a static mesh that we're gonna be using for it, as well as detaching the sides here, so that way we can set up these however we want. Which, since the single shotty is going to have a longer cooldown than the pistol, I think what I'm gonna do is during the shot, we're gonna throw it back, and then it'll do a slow incline back up. So that way, when it's all the way back up, they'll know, okay, I can fire again. It's not gonna be that slow, but slower than the pistol. Okay, so this is the default position. Actually, you know what? Let's think about this. How fast do we want it to shoot? Let's set it to a second and see what that's like first. Let's go over to the left-hand side. Something I didn't mention in the cut-up video was that a lot of the variables are actually in a parent. So that way I can go through and switch around the variables on each gun. So yeah, we need to set the gun cooldown from half a second to a second. So now we know this is going to take an entire second to go off. So let's go to the event graph. Under the fire animation, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna keep this exactly the same, besides obviously the relative location. We'll have to change that. But I want this to happen fast, right? When we fire, I want that 0.2, we can throw back the pin. However, for the last 0.8 seconds, so for whatever's left, I want to make it last for whatever's left, and we're gonna make that ease out. So let's go take a look at our locations. So by default, we're sitting at, you know what, let's head back to the event graph and just have that selected so we can see here. So the blaster sides, when they're in the position where they're resting, where we want them, the position is going to be 10.5, not 0.5, but just 0.5. We got 12.4 and we got 2.2. And then the relative rotation is essentially, oh no, it is all 0. I've seen these random numbers here. I thought that was talking about the rotation. It is not. And then what we'll do is we'll go to the viewport and see the location of this all the way back. So right there, let's go back to the event graph. And now we're at 10.5 again. However, our Y is now 20.4 and the Z is still 2.2, and we do not want those to ease in or out, because this is going to be essentially the hammer sending the gun forward, or the bullet forward. I know it doesn't make sense because it's flying backwards, but it's mostly there for visual effect. We'll hit compile and save. So that is done there. Let's take a look at this. Let's look at our default gun position, and we'll set up our return. So by default, we're sitting at -10, -15, and 5. Rotations are all 0. Get rid of that 0.00001. And then even our rotations are all 0. So perfect. This is a very simple one to set up for the return, which I always like to have an ease out on the return. And then what we're gonna do is, let's go ahead, and this is a shotgun, so I'm not gonna add too much up. It's mostly gonna be back, you know, because whenever you're thinking about it, you're like, right? It's a shotgun. I mean, yeah, I'm sure in real life there's a little bit of up, but I think it'll feel better if it's just like cramming backwards, you know what I mean? You're gonna really feel that power. So I'm gonna grab my gun here, and we're just gonna move it back like a fair bit, but not a ton. Let's go like here, and then we'll go into the world and actually try that. So we need to set up this one. So this one's going to be -10, -9, and 5. And then we need to set it back to -15 here. So I'll put this at -15. That should put it back forward. Put compile and save. And then that should be pretty much set up for the recoil and the little hammer here, which should be put up there. So I'm gonna Control-Shift-S and compile, which should save all. And now we have the single shotty. I don't have a way to add single shotty ammo yet. So what we're gonna do is, for testing purposes, we're gonna go over to the fire request. Actually, all this can be the same. What I want to do though is go to, oh, it's under fire, I think. Yes. What we're gonna do is we're gonna bypass this and just immediately say that it's true. So we're gonna unplug this. We're gonna unplug both of those. We're gonna take fire, plug it straight into here, and just make sure it is always true. So that way we're not checking for ammo. We're just immediately firing. And let's just go see what that looks like. I believe it should be able to fire now. I don't know what it'll sound like or anything. Oh, it's the wrong gun. Let's go to the level blueprint, because this is where I'm currently shoving the gun in their hand. It'll eventually be, you know, something else, but let's take the single shotty and add it. We'll hit compile and save. Now we should have the shotty in our hand. Perfect. So if I left click, oh wow. So that rotation's definitely wrong. It's going all the way to, I don't even know what that is. It's like rotating 90 degrees up, which is not what we want. So let's go to our single shotty. We need to go to our event graph. And where is that happening? Oh, it's right here. Oh no. Let's set this to like 5. So it goes up just a little, but mostly doesn't go up at all. Let's try that again. Oh. I actually think if you look at the hammer, I actually think that should be a lot faster. Because it actually takes a second to go back. I think it's because it might be a longer stretch than the pistol. I also think I should shove it back even more so it really feels powerful. I know the sound effect is going to matter. In fact, I have a temporary sound effect we can use. Let's go to custom sounds for our weapons. Oh, that's only sword, so I must have imported it. So we're gonna do an import, CC0, probably free sound, but I'm not 100% sure. Guns. This might be loud, but I guess I'll edit it in post, but yeah. It's a little loud. Let's go. I'm gonna go and turn this down just a little bit. We're at 0.5 or 0.6. Let's go to 0.5. And then in our single shotty, let's make sure we've got our Q selected. And we'll go to our fire SFX and we will update it to be that shotgun blast and pump. Which I know we're not pumping. Maybe I'll make that hammer do that. I'd have to time it though, which could really suck. We'll put this at 0.1, make that a little bit faster, and we'll put this at 0.9. So we have the visual indicator of when it's able to fire again. And then I want this to go back further. Let's just set this to like 0. Let's see what that looks like, because we want this thing to feel and look powerful. So I actually think maybe the problem is because it's 1 second. It might just be that it is up here. This needs to be more. I'm gonna divide this by like 5. Let's make it even faster on the way back. Let's see here. Boom! Yeah, that's starting to feel a bit better. And then obviously once we get a nice particle effect, that'll feel really good as well. So now what we need to do is, before I get too much into the code, and we might not finish the shotgun, by the way, because I don't know how long it's going to take. And I don't want to make like an hour-long video. I want to make a decent long, but anyway. I think what I want to do is go ahead and potentially add the pellet system. And instead of doing that specifically in the single shotty, I think I'll go to the gun base and we'll just create a function here. Because as you see, we got hit scan. Now we'll do hit scan underscore pellets like that. And what we can do is we can actually use a lot of the code here. So for example, we are going to need all of this. Let's just grab all of this. We do need to grab distance and apply it over here so that way it doesn't cause any errors. So we need an input of distance, float, and then obviously we also need an integer for this because we need number of pellets. Number of pellets, like that. So now we'll be able to know how many hit scans we need and how many lines we're gonna need. Now we can paste, and we should still have that code. I guess we don't. Let's go grab it again. Make sure everything's selected. Copy. We'll head over to our pit scan for pellets, plug it in. So this first thing you're seeing here, this is actually to go get the camera from the player, because obviously if this is a child actor, it does not have access to the player's camera. So that's all that's doing there. Then we're taking the distance. Yeah. You guys have done line traces before, I assume. Okay, so what do we need to do here? Well, first off, we need to run this multiple times. So let's grab all this code and run it to the right here. Let's go ahead and disconnect this. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna do a for loop like this, specifically a for, not a for each loop. We're gonna run this into there. The first index will be 0. Number of pellets will be the last index. Actually, you know what? First index will be 1. Otherwise, we'd have to subtract 1 from pellets because it would start with 0. If you don't know why, for loops are going to start at 0 and then go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. But because we want to control the amount of pellets, we're just going to set the first index to 1. So that way, whenever we say 10 pellets, it does 10 pellets and not 11. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so we run this, we do a for loop. On the loop body, we need to run this right here, where we're going to need, by the way, a couple of modifiers. In fact, let's go ahead and grab in our local variables. We're gonna add a new local variable to the function, and we're just gonna call it offset1. I'm gonna set this to a float. We're gonna add 2 more. Whoa, oh, I closed it. We're going to rename the second one, well, if I can, to offset2. We'll name this one offset3, like that. We'll hit Control-Shift-S, always do that a lot, and compile, always do that a lot. And what these are going to do is they're going to offset the end point. The first point's always going to be your face, but the end point is the thing that needs to have randomness, right? So that way we can control how far out these pellets are going. If I ever get quiet, by the way, and I don't edit it out, it's because normally when I'm recording videos, you might be surprised, maybe not, I cut out a lot of silence. It looks like I go through these very quickly, and it's because I'll be doing a video and then I'll just go, as I think about what to do next, and then I just cut that out. So if you see me do that and I forget to cut it out, it's because I told myself I wanted to do this uncut, and there you go. So if I just randomly, like, I'm thinking, and normally you wouldn't see it, but anyway, okay, so we're going through this. First index, number of pellets is the last index. The first thing we need to do is set 3 different offsets. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a random float in range. And what we're going to do is set this to... this can actually be done on a gun-to-gun basis. I don't think I'm going to put this part in the gun base. And what I mean by that is the spread variable, because we don't need every gun to have a spread variable, because only pellets, for the most part, are going to have a spread. So that's fine. We'll just use min and max as 0, because it'll be individual basis. And what we're going to do is we are going to first set offset 1. Then we are going to set offset 2. Also, if you're wondering why I'm doing it like this and then not just getting like a random number and feeding it to the offset later, and I'm actually setting them here, I tried that, and if you run a random number and you need 3 random numbers and you're not setting them along the way, it will always use the last one, and it will make a perfect line with all of your shots. Just trust me, That's why I'm doing this. Okay, so we've set our offsets. And now that those are set, we can go ahead and start actually doing our line traces here. What we're going to do is, obviously, we got the distance still. That's fine. However, whenever we go to actually do the endpoint, we are going to split this struct, and we are going to split this struct, and we are going to make a clusterfuck. And you'll see what I mean by that, because we have a little bit of space here to work with. We're going to take X, and we are going to add offset 1. Are you starting to see where this clusterfuck's going to come from? Then we're going to take Y. We're going to add. Oh, I did like an array thing. That's not what I wanted. I wanted math, not array. And we're going to add offset 2. And then we have the Z, which, of course, we're going to add offset 3 there. So let's go add. And that will be offset 3. So what's going on here? Well, we have our camera location. That's the start of the line. And then normally we just shoot out forward, and that's our line trace to get like a straight line for our vision. We're adding these offsets that are going to be randomized. So that way the end point moves around, right? It's like over here, over here, over here, over here, right? So that's why we're doing that. Let's go ahead and plug that in. I actually think, by the way, I might not have to do one of these. I think the X might not need to be randomized. Because if you have a distance of 1,000, and then I think it's the X, if the X is more or less, all you're doing is increasing the distance and not actually how much it spreads. We'll see. Because what we're going to do is we're going to have the trace channel have a debug of for duration. So we'll be able to see what's happening. So now when you do a hit scan with pellets, we're going to run a for loop, and each time it's going to run through this, and it's going to return an out hit with a return value, which should work just like anything else. Just it'll do it multiple times. Let's see. Let's head over to our single shotty on fire. What we're going to do is, instead of hit scan, I think we can literally do the same. I think instead of hit scan, we can just delete this. We're going to, since this is a single shotty, we are going to hit a plus, because it's going to be a local variable. And we're going to set this to pellets, so that way we can adjust how many are coming out. And I'm going to set that to an integer. We'll hit save and compile, and we'll set pellets to 10. We'll hit save and compile. And then now we're going to run our new thing here. Instead of hit scan, we're going to run hit scan pellets. So now what we're going to do is we'll take the distance. I'm going to set it to 2,000 for now. I haven't done any balancing with range yet, but 2,000. Number of pellets. We're going to use our pellets here, like that. And then I think I can plug this straight in, because if I'm not mistaken, what's going to happen with that for loop is it's going to return each time. So each time it's going to go, it's going to do this, unless I'm crazy. Because if I'm not mistaken, functions will automatically, or not functions, I'm sorry. For loops will automatically stop if a function hits a return. We'll find out because we'll only have one bullet go through. But yeah, regardless, this is going to go through every time. It's going to do the same thing. Take damage, and again, it's exactly the same. It's just we changed the hit scan. So that should work. Is that everything though? Number blah blah blah. What's my damage on my bullet right now? Because bullets are going to be pellets. Just set this to like 2. We'll hit compile and save. So now there's nothing left to do except hit play and see if it's doing multiple shots or just one. It's doing just one. Okay, I figured that would be the case after I thought about it. So what we need to do is go back into the hit scan pellets. Or you know what? We don't even need a separate function. Yes, we do. Don't listen to me. We do. What we're going to do is, instead of having this here, we're just going to do this immediately. So boop, just like that. So that way this is no longer running this multiple times from within itself. It will be doing it from the outside, and I'll show you what I mean by that. So we'll go back to the single shoddy, and now what we're going to do, because this is what we need to run multiple times, is out of this, now we're going to do a for loop. So for loop. Oh no, is it going to hit a return? Oh, it doesn't. I don't have any returns on this. Thank God. I was like, oh, but if it returns, I'm screwed. There's no returns, baby. So on the for loop, we're going to go ahead and loop body. First index would be first index will be 1. And the last index will be the number of pellets that we're going to be firing, so 10. So it's going to run this 10 times, which should work just fine, unless I'm just wrong. Oh yeah, we can remove pellets from this function. Let's go back to gun base. Let's click on this. Let's remove number of pellets. That, compile and save it. Head back to our shoddy, compile and save. That should have gotten rid of it. It did. And if I'm not mistaken, this should just work now. If it doesn't, I might have to move this even further out of the function and literally make it go to like an event, which is gonna suck. But I don't think so. I think this will work. Let's see. If it doesn't, it doesn't, but I think it will. I don't think it did. Here, let's see how much damage it does to him. It killed him. Okay. So it's doing it 10 times. It is absolutely doing it 10 times. They're not spreading. So we need to figure out why the spread is... Min and max is set to 0. Oh my gosh. Are you kidding me? All right, let's go... Fire request? No, it would be... Hold on. My brain is braining. It would be in, oh, no, I need an override. I don't need a new one. Override. It would be in hit scan pellets. There we go. What? Don't do that. What? Okay, so here's the problem. We're going to have to add variables because what's happening here is the single shoddy can only see the function in this format, which means we don't have access to this min and max. So what we're going to do is we're just going to add a global that everything gets, just called pellet spread, which is really dumb, to be honest. I don't. This is silly. If I'm doing this wrong and you actually can do what I was just doing, let me know. But I'm just going to add a min and a max to pellet spread. We're going to compile and save, and we'll just set these here and here like that, and we'll hit compile and save. So now if we go back to our shoddy, we don't need to use this override. We can just set up the min and max right here. So the minimum, I want there to be a little bit of variation. I don't think any of them should be exactly right. So at a minimum, we're doing 2.5 units, and then as a max, let's start really high. And the reason I want to start high is because I want to see it actually in action. So now when I fire, we should have a spread. Yes! You see that? That's the offset we're adding. Oh, damn. Did all those miss? Damn, not having an aimer makes this hard. All right, cool. Let's go to our single shoddy. And I actually think the max could be higher, because if it's that thin, it becomes very powerful, and it should be powerful, but only close up. So let's make this a very, very wide spread. Let's see what this does. I mean, if you're lucky, you're gonna get a very thin spread, but... Oh yeah. That's much better. So that way you're only hitting some of the shots from far away, and then if you're close, you're fucking nailing the shit out of them. That makes way more sense. But I will balance that more as time goes. But that's it. I think that's it for this video. I hope you guys liked it. I hope you guys learned something or just enjoyed hanging out with me. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and remember I do have a Patreon and I'm trying to make a living, so if you like me and want to support me and you're capable, I would really appreciate it. But I'll see you guys in the next video.